G'day and welcome to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. Today we're going to be previewing opening round, which is just hours away from kicking off, and we are also going to be answering your last minute questions. Let's go!
She's done it from nowhere. Busting the goal from inside the 30. Sheed from the boundary. Dusty. Petrarca. The legend becomes immortal.
G'day and welcome again to the Ball Boys AFL Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Casey, and you can find me on Twitter at Ball Boys Fantasy, joined by the future hat winner himself, Luke Rogerson. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. It is almost 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and there's nowhere I'd rather be than Ball Boys HQ.
Ball Boys HQ.
Not even bed.
Not even bed.
Not even bed. I just...
Bed sounds pretty good to me right now,
nothing gets me going like Ball Boys HQ.
Gotta give the people what they want.
Oh, man, we're pumped up. Let's go.
Let's go. So
I think you just woke my daughter up out the window there, mate. So
yeah, well, she does love the Ball Boys intro. So, but let's get stuck in. We're going to be previewing round 0, and yeah, well, by the time this podcast comes out, it's happening tonight. By the time people listen to this, so
I'm going to be missing out on it too. I'm busy tomorrow night.
Yeah, the first game is probably the most relevant game of all of them.
You're going to have to keep me posted, mate. I'll be checking my phone.
Yeah, so lots to watch and lots to look at because we're going to have stats, and it's not going to be like a normal preseason game. These stats will count because it will dictate their players' price movement. After opening round, we're going to have break evens and things to look at, which will be very interesting in itself. And we're also just the fact that it's not practice matches. There's not, these chipping around and all these halfbacks filling it up. It'll be proper contested footy. So
we're just weaning ourselves onto the season. We've gone from shaky cam, poor camera angles,
trees and stuff.
Now we've got legit stats, and now we've got legit stats that actually count.
Yes, and then proper AFL fantasy. So it really
can't
is
come quick enough.
Big wind up to the start of the season, but we're going to be previewing these games, and I guess just looking at the players that we are watching now. It might not be all of the players that others might be watching. For example, I'm not really going to talk too much. Maybe you want to throw him up there, but I'm not going to talk much about the players like Errol Goulden and Tom Greens and things like that, because I'm personally, just myself, will not be considering them, but I know some people will be. But some of the players that you and I are looking at, and potentially what we need to see from them.
Well, after we do that, we're going to answer some Twitter questions anyway, so you never know. Somebody might ask about those big dogs.
Oh, I'm sure they will. Let's talk about Sydney versus Melbourne, which is the Thursday night matchup.
Yep.
Probably the biggest game in terms of just volume of relevant players. The first thing, and this is maybe not what I would have thought I would say, but I think this is one of the most important things to watch in the opening round. Christian Salem. What does he look like with Clayton Oliver there? And this is really nice that we get to see Clayton Oliver there in opening round, because we're not going to have any surprises when it comes to the real stuff. So what does his role look like with Clary there? Is it, he was the top midfielder in the, community game. And what does that look like when he's back? That's what we're going to be watching. I guess my question to you, is he someone that you are considering over the likes of Jordan Clark, Zach Williams, Kadeen Coleman, those types of players in your backline?
He's certainly my preference if all the stars aligned. How confident I am on all those stars aligning is an absolutely separate question. So I think that what he did in that last practice match, probably you take a little haircut off that when you bring Clary back into that team.
Yeah, he's not going to be the number one mid.
But I was buoyed by the fact that they've obviously earmarked that role for him, and
it's not come out of the blue, really. They have talked about it. Yeah,
it seems as though they've earmarked the role for him, and the fact that he showed something that I didn't know he's capable of, which was those high tackle numbers, means that he's happy to get his hands dirty. So the issue is at that price, we do need him to do some pretty good stuff for us.
Yep.
But of those guys, he's my preference if everything goes as I hope it to go.
I'm very interested, and if I see, again, we'll talk about a line, but if I see that role where he's sort of 60, 65% CBAs, And if he gives me a decent score, I will definitely heavily consider him in my back line because he has an early buy, but it's that round 6 buy. So he might not even be in your team, and you might be able to trade him out and get in someone like a Nick Dacos or anyone else that pops in that defensive line. You can swing him in there. So he'll get some accelerated cash gen. Let's talk about lines. What score do you think is enough for you to... And we'll talk about some of these lines. A lot of it does depend on what else is happening.
For me, it's more roll with Salem, and it's probably a good point to bring up.
So he has a 70% CBA roll, but scores a 70. There's still a line, right? Like
there is. So it's a combination of the two. Is what we've been saying for all preseason. So I think I'd need to see something upwards of 90 in that good roll as well. Would just give me that confidence to say, okay, that's solid. Roll looks good.
Yeah.
And I think it would also sort of depend on what's happening around him as well. In terms of, okay, what
There's another game where you got Kadeem Coleman and Zach Williams obviously playing, and they are other players that might fill that similar kind of spot.
The other thing too that, might be something to consider is even though Clary is playing, we'll need to watch his time on ground closely. We need to watch what role they're deploying him in because obviously he's not going to be absolutely fit and firing, coming off the best preseason ever or anything like that. So we just need to consider what that looks like, and as they ease him in over the next couple of weeks,
does that take away?
Exactly. Yeah. We're not looking at Salem as like a 1 or 2 week play for a pop.
We probably want him for 5 weeks at least.
So we need to be pretty certain on that roll over the 5 weeks, I think.
So price at 77.5. I think your line of 90 is a pretty good one because that's, just over 12 points above his price tag. So that'll at least get his price moving in the right direction, which is, I guess, what you would like to see with some of those more value guys. So I think, that 90 line is pretty good, assuming he's got sort of like that 60% CBA roll. I think those would all be big ticks for me. Let's move on to Jack Billings. Again, another value option. What does he need to do to cement him on your team, or at least heavily consider him? Or is there something that he will do that maybe rules him out of your team?
Yeah, he's really interesting specifically for me. He's a guy that is at the minute filling sort of the last role that I'm not 100% happy with in my team.
Yeah.
In that forward line as well. Just so for all transparency, I don't mind. At the moment, I'm kind of looking at like a Fisher, F1. Then I've been playing with Billings at F2, Jordan, McKenzie, Sexton, Reed. And I'm kind of pretty happy with Jordan, McKenzie, Sexton, Reed, as well as Fisher.
Yeah.
It's that last role that and you can see here, like that I'm
we'll
kind of tossing
talk
up
about that player
over.
later, yes.
We will. So Billings, I think he would have to sell himself to me. Just because I'm umming and ahhing a little bit. What are your thoughts on Billings?
Yeah, I think the Billings thing is interesting because obviously we will talk about Luke Jackson later. I think prior to that forward line, there was like that last player that there wasn't really like a consensus sixth guy that you'd liked in there.
Yeah.
Jackson kind of has put his hand up to put him in that spot. But if Jack Billings does come out, scores an 85-90 at his price tag, again, he's in there to generate cash, to get him into one of those big dogs at his buy round. You're trading him out. That's huge. Like that's a big thing for him because you're going to get that quick injection of cash. You can cull him before that, and you're a step ahead of that price generation cycle than some of the other players are. So I think my line for me, just to consider him based on anything else going around, is probably 85.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So if he scores 85, there's a scenario where he is in my team. If he scores less than that, it's probably less likely.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my line there.
He's shown that he can give you that kind of score without the CBA role as well, which is as much as we'd like more CBAs, that can be good as well. So definitely one to keep an eye on.
What about some of the rookies in Caleb Windsor and Blake Howes? I think we're obviously more confident with the Caleb Windsor. Is there a line that you're looking for him? Again, a lot of this is going to depend on the other options available, but I think generally...
I think you're right in saying the other options, especially we're going to talk about a couple of GWS for, boys later on as well. But for Windsor, it would just be, I don't want a real stinker. If I get a 20 or a 30, I'm going, well, that's stunting that cash gen, and then that would make me look elsewhere.
And how he looks too, do you know what I mean? Does this look like a player that's going to be in there week in, week out, or is he looking like a vest risk? Like
so far, what I've seen in the preseason, he does look like that player.
I agree.
But you know what a stinker can do to the cash generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll watch.
I think if he comes out and gets a 50 or even like a 48, 49 and looks the goods, I I'm still happy to roll him out there depending on the other options. If there is a guy that really pops that we don't expect and he's got a 48-49, obviously you'd probably fade that. But with everything going the way we expect, a 50 I'm pretty happy with to get him out there because I think he does have a bit of job security. Blake Howes on the other side is maybe a bit of a different story with those defenders. I do see him a little bit more on the edge of the team, which makes me a bit nervous. So I'd probably want to see maybe like a 60 for him compared to a Windsor, just because I'm a little bit less confident in his job security. And so the reason I'd be starting him instead of paying up for someone like a Gibcus is because I think he can score more.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to set the bar a little bit higher for Howes and go for the 60 mark for me.
Let's talk big boys, but not in the sense that you normally love talking big boys. We're talking about
literal big men,
big in stature, because this game has some very relevant big men. Talk to me about Gawn and Grundy.
Yeah, Gawn and Grundy going up against each other. Now Grundy did himself no favors in the preseason, dropping that. What did he have? 51 points, but he did that rucking alongside Peter Laddams. Peter Laddams has not been named. He's an emergency for this team, so Grundy will have that number one ruck role. So put all those worries to bed, which I don't think any of us really were too concerned of.
Yeah.
He goes up against Gawn. So I guess the answer is, the question here is, obviously they verse each other. Max has typically been a harder to score against Ruckman. We haven't seen Grundy.
Because he's taken all the points.
Because he gets all the points. We haven't seen Grundy ruck solo in a while, so we don't really remember or know what he is in terms of like a matchup.
Yeah.
Difficulty on the scale of hardness. I'd imagine he'd be on the harder side of things. Would you think?
He's a decent ruckman. You'd
be on the orange kind of scale.
You'd hope so. Some of the sort of ruck matchup also depends on just what the team structure is and how they want to play that. Like whether you're playing a ruckman, you want your ruckman to run with the other ruckman.
Like Essendon, for example, like a red, because they just don't have any stoppages and they negate and that's it. But
it can depend. Yeah. I think an interesting question here, because you haven't been high on Grundy essentially for all preseason, I want to know, is there anything he could do?
If he comes out and scores a 110, I'm definitely, my ears perk up.
Okay.
I'm looking at that.
Would that have to come in conjunction? I mean, I was going to say in conjunction with Cherry doing something, but he doesn't play again. We don't get to see him.
We don't get to see him anymore. So, look, if Grundy comes out, scores a 110, and he looks decent and definitely competes, and we can kind of see the difference between him ticking the legs over in preseason versus when the real stuff starts. Okay, no, he was just cruising, and this is the real Grundy.
I reckon you'd still pick Cherry.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying, if he scores a 110, I'm definitely looking. I'm not necessarily just plugging him in my team and forgetting it, but I'm definitely starting to work things around and see what that affects the rest of my team. Max on the other side, I'm much more sold already. So if he goes 85, like that's even under his starting price, I'd probably still consider it because he's more of the player that I'm putting there for points and cash gen, but he is going to be a captain VC option, so it's less of an issue for me for Gawn.
It probably brings up the point as well. It's important to watch these games and not just check the stats out, because if Gawn gives you an 85, but you see something that you really don't like in there, then that can sway you compared to, it's an 85, it's a little bit of an off game, and maybe it was just wasn't his night. It makes it very, very different. Yeah,
100%. On the Sydney side, James Jordan, I mean, we're pretty confident what he's going to give us. What do you think he needs to do in terms of a line there? Do you have something in mind for what you want to see from him from a scoring perspective?
Given what he showed us in the last preseason game, I'd even be willing to take a little bit less on the line. I think he's shown us that he's solid, he's there, and with recent injuries, it might not be a massive CBA attendance, but I think he's just going to be more in and around the mix. So I'd be happy to see even if we got like a mid-70s or low 80s, I would be, that's all good.
I think 70, I'm happy with. Even if it's like a 68, 69, I'd probably still consider it because, again, you're going to have variances, but he's priced at 50, so you're at 70, you're already 20 points. So
if it's 69, you'd always consider it.
Absolutely.
Did you just try and slip that in there? Or?
No.
I don't know why you'd be, 68, 69, we'll consider it.
It's just a little bit less than 70, mate.
The answer's always yes, mate.
Get your head out of the gutter, mate. All right. Matt Roberts is another interesting one from the Sydney Swans. Now, he is someone, well, first of all, I want to make sure that he's not subbed out in this game or used as the sub. We don't know who the sub is yet.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing he's got to tick off.
He is on that 5-man interchange currently. So.
Yeah, so if he's subbed out, I don't care what he scores, he's probably a bit of a line through. Even if he has a cracking 3 quarters and that gets subbed out, I'm not too keen.
I just feel for the bloke. That's his role, being subbed out, isn't it?
Weird. I know, he seems to do it a lot. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
But then after that, if he again goes maybe sort of like that 55 to 60 range, 60 probably I'm more hoping for, but 55, mid-50s, I'm a bit more happy to start him there. What are your thoughts?
Agreed. I think you summed it up well.
Moving on. This next one's, we're really looking at the 2 backmen here, Zach Williams, Kadeem Coleman. Let's start with Zach Williams because he's very interesting to me. First of all, we want to see, is he 100%? And I also want to have a look at how much game time does he play, because he's coming off the back of playing that VFL game, not the Community Series game. Is there... Well, first of all, does he get subbed out? Does he get red vested? And what does he look like? Does he look like someone who's still working his way back into fitness, or does he look like, all right, I'm in here for round 0, so I'm 100%, let's go? What are your thoughts on him? Are you off him completely, or...?
I'm not off him completely, and I actually even think that I'm more susceptible to being swayed into picking him, just because for a lot of us, he's been a guy that's filled space in our team, and I know that's not a good enough reason to pick him, but if he shows us enough...
There's a reason, right? Like, he's priced at 49.
Especially
very cheap.
Especially given what we're looking at down back, there's not a whole heap of options that are filling me with confidence, especially around that price bracket. So I think if I saw that, even if his game time was managed a bit, but I still saw the scoring potential there, and it looked as though he was, providing them a lot of bounce, and looking like the Zach Williams we know he can be, then I think I'd be heavily considering it.
Because this might also be people's ticket to get to that Luke Jackson from a structure they previously had.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people would like to do that and make that work. And again, we'll talk about that later. But I think that is something that will also factor into this. I am a little bit less confident or willing to go there. I think just with the run up to the start of the season, it doesn't strike me with much confidence. And he does have that round 2 bye. But you do have to say that he's priced at 49. So if he comes out and he scores... like a mid-70s, and if he goes 79, there's 30 points over his price stat. Not 69, 79.
You're just like, got to do something with a 9.
I'm just 30 points. So he goes 30 points over 79.
Okay, sorry.
That's my line there, right? So he's gone 30 above his price stat figure. If he does that, I will definitely heavily consider it because I do want him to get off, because he's got 1 game and then he's on a bye. So you want that price injection to be quick and fast for it to be worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. With some of these guys as well, I feel like there's also the element of ownership percentage as well. Like if I feel like the general consensus from a lot of people, and I see the numbers are suggesting, well, a lot of people are going to start with Zach Williams, then there's a little bit of that sways me, just something that I've talked about in the last little bit of wanting to be as sort of vanilla as I can with the team and make it a trading game. So I think that's something that you can also keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. Kadeem Coleman, what do you think about him? What's your line for Kadeem?
The line would actually be pretty high for me. I think this, whether I'm right or wrong, I just haven't been hot on Kitty Coleman all preseason. And even that last game when we saw him come out and give you the 40-point quarter in the first quarter, but then it was sporadic. You know, there was like a 6-point quarter, 11-point quarter, whatever it was. It almost kind of confirmed for me, this is a guy that is immensely capable, but quarter to quarter, you don't know what you're going to get, let alone game to game. So I would have to see the best role. I'd have to see 100+ score, I think.
100, you want it to turn up.
And it not because I think that he needs to go at 100 to be valued. No. Don't get me wrong there. But
you're worried in terms of like...
That would just go, okay, maybe this guy is for real. And I'd almost, it might sound silly, I might be being really picky, but I'd almost want to see the real consistency between the quarters. We're going 25, 25, 25, but you know what I mean? It sounds ridiculous.
I've heard the criticism of him not having a tank and things like that, and that's why his his scoring seems to fade in those second and fourth quarters, which could be a thing.
Yeah, I just haven't been big, and this could be our equivalent to our Tom Green last year. We absolutely missed that one, and he could be that player. But it's
the good thing is if there is if he backs it up again in round 1, we don't pick him, then we have the chance to jump on him in round 3, which I do think is something to also consider. So for me, I do think that my line is probably more around that 95, mid-90s, maybe a little bit lower than you. The other thing I'll couple with that is that I want him to be the number 1 scoring Brisbane defender.
I'd like him to take a kick in too.
I would love him to take him to kick in, but he didn't do that last game, which I thought was interesting. Still scored all right. But yeah, I want him to be the number 1 scoring defender for Brisbane, which I think is likely, but just want to make sure it's not just, he's getting there by them just chipping around and everyone's kind of getting a lot of points. But yeah, 95, I think, for me. Last one here on this one, Kai Lohman. What's his role and job security are my questions here. First of all, similar to like a Matt Roberts, don't get subbed. Scoring line, I'm a bit more down on him. Again, he's got the early buy. So again, it's probably a higher scoring line for me here. If he goes 65, I think is my line because, again, we've got some better rookie options in our forward line. So I want him to score better to overcome those other options. So to me, his line for me is about that 65 to 70 mark.
We've also mentioned a couple of times that with those teams that are competing for premierships, if you're a young fella in there,
it's hard to stay in there.
You're
first
a
of all,
best risk, week to week as well. So he's playing great footy at the moment, but there's nothing to say that if he has a couple of down weeks that the vest comes or the tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk Gold Coast Richmond. The main guy we're really watching here is Sam Flanders. What are you wanting to see from him to make him worth an option? I guess this changes even more so now with the Luke Jackson addition to the equation because he's another maybe premium option that we'd maybe more happily go to with no buy.
Yeah.
But with all that in mind, like, is there a world where he impresses you enough to jump on, or what do you think?
This one's been really interesting. I've flip-flopped a little bit here, but in the last probably couple of days, I think I've actually firmed on not having him.
Yeah, I think I have too.
I think I've found some options in the forward line that I'm quite happy with that present value, and the early buy is probably the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's just for me, the thing is there's a little bit of uncertainty there as to whether he's in the top echelon of midfielders at, the top three. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like, if I miss, I'm not going to miss huge. He'd have to do something pretty good in opening round to change my mind, I feel, at this stage.
Yeah, I think what I would want to see is like a 60% CBA roll and 110 plus.
That's a big score. I was trying to do some digging before. I saw that Sean Darcy obviously out for the first part, but have they put a number on how many games yet? Or
I saw somewhere 3 to 5, but I don't know if that's confirmed yet.
Okay.
I don't think I've seen official word, but I saw some article somewhere. I don't know how reliable it was, but said 3 to 5. But
it makes that Luke Jackson option very appealing. Especially, it sucks a little bit now that we don't get another look at Freo before round one because of what they decide to do.
Did Luke Jackson even play in that preseason game? I was trying to.
Well, he was so fantasy irrelevant prior to
we weren't looking at it, were we?
That and then Big Das goes down. So I think that the option, the fact there that you would have coverage for one of either Gawn or Grundy or potentially both of them.
Why did Luke Jackson not play? Was he injured or something like that? Has he had a interrupted preseason?
That's an
interesting one.
Dig on that, but. Yeah, the opportunity for him to come in instead of maybe going Flanders and, like I was saying, provide you some. If the Darcy thing goes on for 5-6 weeks, then you get ruck coverage on those bye rounds. Like it starts to become not only potentially a value play, but also a
utility kind of like fix up. Alex Sexton, I guess we just got to see more of the same. What we see in the preseason line to me is pretty comfortably. Like even if he just goes like 60, 65, like that's still 20, 25 points above his price stat figure.
Yeah.
Maybe we're hoping for more, but even if he just has the same role, scores 60, I'm pretty happy to lock him in.
Have you kind of put a line through any of those other Gold Coast defenders?
I think I have. I don't think I like the idea of going with a Budarick or a Powell or anything like that just because they're going to steal points off each other, whereas Sexton is cheap enough that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
So those other guys, I think there's just bit of the Essendon situation about them. No one's really stepping up and being a Nick Martin and going, give me the ball all the time, every single time. They're kind of working in amongst each other. It sort of looks like to me so far. Gibcus is the only Richmond player really worth considering. Now, what do you think he averages? Because some people are saying that he's, one of the better options to start in defence. I really struggle to see him averaging more than like 45.
Yeah, I think even that could be a stretch. Yeah, like
I'm expecting 30s and 40s from him. I really don't think he's going to score much at all. What would the line be for you to consider it? Because we do think he's got decent job security.
Yeah, the line one on this is tough because I think even if he gave you like a 60, I would consider it an anomaly and an out-of-the-box score.
Yeah, if he gave me a 60, I'd be happy because at least I could ride that price movement. But
yeah, you can. It's the reason we're considering it is just because we're bereft of those cash cow options in defence as well. So it would also depend on
maybe like a Howes or something like earlier.
Yeah, and who else I could see putting their hand up also in round 1 as well. Like, I think, was it Reed from Essendon there, gave a good account of himself in the practice match. Am I getting that one right?
Yeah. He scored a 67.
So you'd also kind of be contemplating, well, if I lock in Gibcus, am I taking, even though I've got that guaranteed 50, 60 score, whatever it is, am I taking myself away from the opportunity to potentially get a guy that could give me some more prolonged cash generation?
I think that if that happened, I think I'd be getting a bit greedy if I was looking for more than that. So I think if he gave me a 50, even a 50, I'd probably take, because I think for him that's good.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to get at least a little bit of a price rise at the beginning because I expect him to play again the next few rounds. And then if another option presents itself, I can pivot over and do that. But I actually don't think he's going to get there. Like I said, I think he's a 30s, 40s guy. So
yeah,
don't
in
expect that.
Too.
We'll run through these next ones pretty quickly because they're all rookies. Aaron Cadman, Josh Fay, Harvey Thomas for GWS. Is there anyone here that, you look at more confidently? I think Cadman for me is an interesting one because we know that they're going into West Coast and North Melbourne in their first 2 matchups. However, he's a key forward. So, and our forward line in terms of rookies are pretty good. I still set the bar pretty high here for Aaron. So I think my thing is going to be 65 again. Like I think I'll need a decent score, 65, 70 even, because again, he's a key forward and I don't normally go for those types.
Yeah, you mentioned that he's a key forward, but I think the better point that you bring up is we have to pick him as a forward in fantasy too. So if he gives you that 65, well, you're going to have to, it's Windsor, Lazaro, Wilson. These guys are the guys that are going to be going. Potentially. You'd want to be pretty confident that they're going to score. I mean, like Lazaro looked great last week. Obviously, Windsor we feel like has solid job security and can give us some cash gen from Melbourne there. And Darcy Wilson looked fantastic as well.
Yeah,
so
we've got some good options.
it would be that's a great score. But also, who do I risk?
He reminds me of what was the Melbourne guy last year, the key forward that we all had locked in.
Van Rooyen.
Yeah, Van Rooyen. Yeah, like he came out and I think he had like an 80-something first game or something like that. And that was enough for us to all jump on.
Yeah.
So if he does something like that, then obviously we do
80,
we do that. But if Van Rooyen didn't, and even he, after that score, he went up a little bit, but it's not like it wasn't like he ended up being a must-have rookie. Like he was a decent rookie. And that's after an 80 to kickstart that cash gen. So Aaron Cadman still is an uphill battle for me, just being that ruckman. I also want to see how much he chops out. Sometimes he's been doing a bit of chopping out in the ruck. Yeah. So if he does that, that will give me a little bit more confidence. Maybe that line moves down 5 or 10 points. Harvey Thomas and Josh Fay. You want to make sure they're not subbed or anything like that, or they're actually not used as the sub. And I guess it's just, that line of that 65 again, I think is usually my line for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, I think they're all sub risks. It would make life really difficult if one of them pulled something out of the box.
Yeah.
If one of them gives you like a...
Yeah, it'll be a hard question. Yeah.
Was it Chandler? Kyle Chandler?
Yeah. Cade
Chandler. Last year, like if they give you an 80, 90, 100, you're like, I've got to pick this guy.
Oh,
but
yeah,
it probably still doesn't change the fact that they're an ongoing vest risk.
Yeah.
At their team. So
I think you just got to, with a score like that, you just got to take it.
You got to do it.
Let's move on to the last one, and I'll chuck just one player in that, Nick Dacos. The question I'm going to ask myself is, how much am I going to hate watching Collingwood this season? Because I don't think there's a scenario where he's going to answer my team.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to hate it. We proved how much we hated it last
season. I hated it last season.
It was awful.
Yeah, so and if I'm not going to have anyone else from Collingwood, then why would I even watch Collingwood, Luke? Like, why?
You just got to do it to yourself. You just got to. It's like a self-loathing thing.
He comes out, scores 160.
I'm finding the way.
Okay, so there is a line. Right?
Oh man, there is a line.
Yeah, there's a line for everyone.
It's the worst. There's always a price.
Yeah, every man has his price, but for me, it is going to be quite high. I think that 150 kind of line is about where I'd sort of sit for Nick Dacos.
It's not out of the realms of possibility.
No, he definitely could do it. So that will do it for us with those opening round previews. Let's go into some of the questions, and
Before we
start.
do we want to jump in?
Yeah, make sure you guys, if you are enjoying all the preseason content, like and subscribe over on our YouTube channel. Like this video, hit subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And also, if you want to get in the most fun podcast and be involved, well, not in it, but involved.
Mate, promise low and over-deliver.
It'll be an okay podcast, but it'll be great. Come along and take work off and, do everything you can to be there. Round one.
You said that every time.
I do. Yeah. Round one, Friday afternoon, 5 p.m. Daylight savings time. We're going to be live going through the big boys, going through our last-minute freak-out preparation for fantasy because, and I tweeted this out, Carlton versus Richmond on Thursday night. Maybe we'll have Zach Williams, but other than that, it's a fucking barren wasteland when it comes to fantasy relevance.
It is.
So fantasy really starts with the Ball Boys live show at 5 o'clock on a Friday. Be there, be square, bring a beverage of choice. Go and like that video. We're over the 100. We've got the 109. Let's see if we can get it to 150. We're aiming the bar high, so this is going to be the biggest show of the season yet. So do check that one out. All right, first question of the day, and this is going to be for a lot of people, I'm sure. Byron asks, is Luke Jackson a solid option? Can you go with Luke Jackson at an R2, or is it better to have him at R2, or better to have him at an F1?
F1 because there's good value.
I also think it's pretty easy to go F1 and then you can swing him there for flexibility.
Can I ask you, because this will build into answering this question, how many weeks would Sean Darcy have to be out
very good question.
for you to then go, I'm willing?
I've done a bit of experimenting around and had a look at it, and I am leaning to not loving this option.
Okay. For
a number of reasons. First of all, the uncertainty of how long Sean Darcy is out. I think they've talked about it that they're removing loose bodies, and if that is the case, from a typical rehab point of view, it's a 4 to 6 timeline. Which, if you do that now, that's rounds 3 to 5. Okay, which you only get a few rounds of Luke Jackson being his dominant self or whatever, and then you're not even going to get to use him when it comes to rounds 5 and round 6 when you want to cover your Gorns and your Grundys, in that ruck line.
So it loses that part of its value.
And even if it is, later and it's the, rounds 6, 7, 8 that we want it to be, that's upgrade season. And in terms of upgrade cadence and being that step ahead of I'm trying to get a mid-price up to a premium or a rookie up to a premium, if you're spending a week where you're trying to get Luke Jackson out of your team because he's gone back to being a chop-out ruckman, you're a week behind a little bit in terms of that upgrade cadence. And to me, his upside is not so worth it from his price that I want to put myself in that position where I'm a little bit behind the rest of the comp in terms of upgrading, getting premiums onto my field.
I think you make good points. Something else that started to play into my mentality with it as well, when I was just half hour ago having a play around with it, was the structure of the team that I had. I was having to restructure in other lines to get him in. Whereas let's say for example, I was a person that at that stage was considering Flanders as my F1.
It's easy to get him to
and it was down, and I was saving cash, and that was bolstering. That felt to me would feel less. Like I was having to completely restructure everything. So the issue for me...
Well, we were going cheap in our forward line.
Exactly. So when I was going I'll try to get Billings to Jackson. Okay, well, I've lost 250K. And then that meant that, Wines was turning into someone in that Huswaite Bonner bracket. And then I felt that was a compromise. So I guess where you're going kind of dictates it as well. And like you said, if he's not there by the time that the buys come around, you've lost that value. So really, you're only getting it for the value that you hope he can increase in 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
And I did shout out to the traders as well. They went through his lines from last year. He had a huge game against the Lions last year. 149 was his ceiling score, best of his career. That kind of floats his average that you put up there. I think he averaged 99 without Sean Darcy in, I think it was 8 games or 9 games or something like that. But you take that game out and it goes down to a 92 average.
Yeah.
So it's... And that game versus the Lions was without the big O there. He was going up against Darcy Fort. And he had a couple of those. I think there was a run where he was going up against, he had the Eagles, he had Collingwood without Darcy Cameron. He went up against, I think it was Port Adelaide without...
The Lions one was a hard-fought battle. But
yeah, I think it was... Oh, Jesus. I was like, where are you going with this?
Yeah, I was hoping you'd stop talking quicker so I could get me joking, but I just cut you off.
Emphasize the fort part, mate.
A bit of mystery, mate.
But yeah, I think the ceiling, like he has the ceiling, it's there, but I think it's more likely not that he's going to come out and give you 90s, maybe low hundreds. And I think that's not going to really hurt you.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, he's not cheap. He's priced at 85. He's up there.
I think it's
that's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. Like you said, he could drop like a 120, 130 on your face. The run for them is actually, it's not bad. I think it's a decent run, especially if he can make it to those rounds 5 and 6. I think he's got Port Adelaide, West Coast in back-to-back rounds. He has the West Coast matchup in round 6 when, if you have a Max Gawn, he's covering him. So that's a big, something you can get. And we saw what bloody O'Brien did to them the other day in the practice match. They're still going to feast. So
a few ifs there.
But yeah, it's a different one. If you do have Flanders in your side right now, I do think it's much easier to restructure and just go across and actually use cash to bolster your team elsewhere. I think I would be doing that if that was how I was structuring up. All right, let's go. Another question here. We won't get to all of these ones here, guys. I'm sorry. We've just got a little bit, like we said, we're old men and we've got to get to bed. So we'll answer as many as we possibly can. Let's have a look at this one. How does the best 18 affect our strategy this season? Is it affecting your strategy much this season, Luke?
Currently not. I think I'm still in that that idea of hunting to value. I don't know whether that's the right thing to do. I just kind of see it as the consensus thing to do across most of what I've been listening to. And I'm willing to kind of just go with the crowd on that one, for at least my starting selections. But I think there's definitely a play that if you wanted to be out there and you wanted to be aggressive first season with this new buy structure, that if it was that you're that way inclined, then you might have a go at some more guns and rookies to capitalise.
I think the only thing it would do for me is I want to make sure that I have at least one go-to genuine gun premium option that's a captain option.
And you got him in your ruck line. Yeah,
Maxi Gawn. So I think that's the only thing and I probably would want to do that most seasons anyway, but maybe just gives me a little bit more. I'm not as hesitant to maybe pay up for some of those bit more pricier guys, but I don't want to trick myself into thinking that it's just best 18 and come round 3 we've got 3 laid outs and someone that goes down in the first quarter, and if I didn't think it's just best 18 and I've got a couple of 20s in my field and all of a sudden I'm fielding one of them,
could be chaotic.
It could be very chaotic. So it's there as like a buffer for me. Just like what we treat the middle part of the rounds. You don't want to go in and go, it's just best 18. I'll just field 19. You want to have as many bites of the cherry as possible to put yourself in the best position. That's the way I'm thinking about it.
If you did sort of go to like a guns and rooks thing as well, like we've spent a lot of the preseason talking about how it's like there's not this surplus of rookie options that you just get to pick in round 1.
Yeah,
especially ones that don't score well. So you could leave yourself up the creek without the paddle.
We've got a few questions asking about M1 options. So your number 1 mids. A few people asking about Bonds. Some people are asking for the Gouldens as well, the Dawsons. Do you like shopping in that kind of category? Or what are your thoughts about going cheaper with someone like a Parrish, Rosie, or maybe looking at your team even cheaper than that? What are your thoughts on that and how that structure looks for you? Where are you leaning?
The only 2 structures I've had have either been at the top end of M1 or at the very lower end of M1. So right at the you can see my team right at the moment. I've got Butters as M1 and most. I think a lot of people go, "What the fuck is Butters doing at M1?" So it's obviously the cash spread is a little bit more so. But then a team that I was playing around with an hour ago had Dawson at M1. Okay. I haven't since having Laird and Brayshaw in there earlier. Brayshaw with the wing stuff that we saw. Laird, it's ridiculous that it's what, Roy would say, jumping at shadows, but even just the talk of him going forward, you want an absolute certainty in your pick at M1.
And like what they show with Rankin going through there a bit more, even Sam Berry popping his head into the team, just like a few more action names putting their hands up. I think just scares you a little bit.
So, and then I haven't shopped in the bracket below there with, like you said, Rosie and Parrish. So
I don't know if I love that middle way. I mean, unless you like your team is just you love every other aspect with it and you're happy with it and you just go to the best player you can afford. Like there was situations in my team where I had someone like a Caleb Sarong in there and I think he's around that Parish kind of price tag. I don't mind that. If you got to spend money, I think. And if you can afford a better player with a team that you're happy with, get that better player. Don't worry about value. Personally, I think the more I'm thinking about it, I want to have one of those like 110 guys there.
Jordan Dawson's the guy for me. If you're gonna pay up.
Yeah. I'm on record saying that I think Jordan Dawson's going to be the number one averaging player this season. Now, there's a few reasons why I think that because of his the run that he went on once he moved into the midfield. He averaged 115 from there. I think he's got a super high floor, which is something that I look for with my premiums. I don't want anyone dropping a Rory Laird 54 on me in round one. But even with him, there's risks. There's risks. To talk about the same thing we talk about Rory Laird. Well, that will also apply to Jordan Dawson as well. So the more you pay, the bigger the risk. But I just personally, I feel a bit more comfortable having that bigger vice captaincy option personally. All right. What about we're going to talk about best strategy for the forward line. Do you prefer fielding one rookie in there and having someone like a Cam Mackenzie in your forward line, or are you happy to field the two rookies and maybe fade someone like a Cam Mackenzie? So this person in particular, Brownie here, is asking if he really wants Cam Mackenzie, but he has to put Darcy Wilson on the bench to do so.
I really like Cam Mackenzie, and I know at the moment, I think you were telling me this yesterday, that he's not actually really highly owned, which surprised
very lowly owned.
Surprised me a little bit. I don't know if it's because I watched Hawthorn so closely over the last couple of weeks for that midfield mix. The reason I'm going Mackenzie and then having only the one rookie...
So you're going like Harley Reid at F6?
At F6. I do have Sexton there at F5, so whether you probably don't consider him a rookie in the role that he's playing.
He's
price-wise.
Really, yeah.
But the reason I kind of see it is I feel like in this role, Cam Mackenzie over the last couple of weeks has shown that he's a pretty safe kind of 70 to 80 guy, maybe a little bit lower if he's having an off day, even when he's playing that wing role. So I know that kind of contradicts what he did last year because I think he got vested a few times and he was at vest risk, but just based on what I've seen in the first two games, I don't see that that's the way Hawthorn are looking at him now. Did you kind of get that same idea watching the
I don't think he's much of a vest risk, and I think he's going to be someone that's probably a safe 70, I would think. So, and at his price, that's a really good starting pick. So I'm in on Mackenzie. I think that he's someone that I want to have. He's kind of that last, forward option for me. But I don't think you have to choose, to be honest. I think you can structure up in a way where you have two rookies and Mackenzie sitting there. Maybe Cam Mackenzie sitting at F3. I think that's definitely an option you can have a look at as well. It just depends on how confident you are in the other rookies and things like that. So, and if you want to get all of the rookies where you have a Wilson, a Windsor, a Lazaro, a Reed, Cadman, if someone like a Kai Lohmann pops his head up as well.
Just going to experiment with this on the fly, man. Keep talking.
There you go. So those kind of things I actually don't mind as well. So I don't necessarily think you have to choose. If there was another player, like, for example, in that scenario I'm talking about, you're probably having a Fisher at F1. Whereas if you want a Luke Jackson at F1, then you are probably going with more that Reed at F6 in that situation, because you still want to fit in your Fishers, your James Jordans, your Alex Sextons. So I guess that's a bit of
I've saved, mate.
Bit of a structured debate.
Nick Dacos. Welcome to the Oxlogs, bruh.
Editing on the fly. We might just do a couple of more. Zach just wants to know our confidence levels going into the fantasy season. Scale of 1 to 10. How confident are you this season? 1. Don't give me that.
Until I've delivered results, my confidence level will just be low. Under promise, over perform. That's my intention.
I'm a solid 9.
Well, mate, you've been.
I'm kidding.
You've been a bee's dick off Hat City in the last 2 years, so
yeah. And now I'm going to be a bloody elephant's dick off it this year, I reckon. I've done all this. I've done all this close call stuff, and maybe this is the year where it all falls to shit. But
we'd have so much better credibility if you just fucking won those hats. You prick.
Fucking hell, man! Don't pile on me when I'm all down over here.
Why'd you fuck it up? The Ball Boys would actually have a legit, credible name if you had 2 hats sitting behind you.
Just one captain decision. Bloody hell. Anyway, look, I feel calm right now. We've done the work. We talk about this every bloody day, so
we do.
I feel confident. Salem or Jordan Clark? This is a good one for you, I reckon.
It is a good one.
Jordan Clark.
I kind of answered it, I think, earlier in the podcast when I said it's quite obviously Salem if the role is what we saw it to be last week.
Even with the bye, obviously no Clark bye.
Yeah, I think because the bye comes later, that helps.
I think I'm that way too. There's 9K difference, so they're very similar in price. I think I'm sailing over Clark right now without obviously watching the game, which is going to be out tonight by the time people listen to this.
Yeah, I just think you have better access to points in that role, and Jordan Clark has shown in the past that he can be sporadic.
Bit up and down.
Yeah.
Can we start Bonner? A lot of people are asking about Riley Bonner from the Saints. He obviously did well in the practice games. He's in that 400K price tag. What are your thoughts on Bonner?
Yeah, he had plenty of the Sharon too. It was 30 touches. So issues being what happens when Sinclair in particular comes back, I think, and how that manipulates. So that to me is a pretty decent unknown, but even if you could get a couple of weeks of 30 touches, 100 fantasy points, Bonner, you would get a considerable price rise.
You would. I still think there's enough value in our midfield that you're picking another value option. So if they're going up at the same time Bonner's going up, maybe Bonner's going up a little bit more, but I would want to see his game with Sinclair in the side before I'm confident enough to launch into it personally. But
yeah, so there's that way of looking at it is pay up for someone else and drop down to him if he pops.
Yeah,
I guess. But then there are some structures that I've played around with where that let's call it the M6 spot is a spot where I'm like, I don't really like crouch there.
Is that your ticket to get Luke Jackson or
So I think that of the sort of two guys that I've been looking at in the price bracket, Hustwaite's probably, although I really liked the role, it's not going to eventuate. And then Bonner there, I don't think it's something that I'll go to, but if you are a St Kilda fan or you saw something that we didn't, then hey,
there's a world where it works.
Could be a great pick.
If you're hot on it, I'm not going to talk you out of it. Personally, I'm not. I don't think I'll be going there, but let's finish on this one here from our good friend Bales. Who wins the Content Creators Cup? He's got some nonsense here about that I can't pick myself or something like that, but
but you'll pick yourself.
No, who's going to win it?
I would actually like to see Bales win it. I know Bales asked the question, made it sound like a sucker, but I've often said I think Bales is the hardest working.
Well, you said you'd like to see him sit it. Do you think he'll win?
Yeah, I'll back Bales in. The bloke did 25 head-to-head episodes. That bloke works hard.
He does.
And
he
so
does.
if
he's going to back his gut in this year, he tells us. So that's his thing.
Okay,
and,
I'm on the Bales train.
I'll tell you who won't win it. That little shit guy. Tim Guest, nowhere near it. He's going to be nowhere near it.
Guy. Wow, that, Guesty.
Bales were in. Guesty, we're down on it.
You and Guesty just keep return and serve to each other, mate. There's a bit of trash
Guesty's
talk.
Bottom of the ladder. No, I think the odds-on favourite's got to be Mini Monk joining the league. Back-to-back hats. Is it back-to-back hats? I think he's got.
He's an elite operator.
Yeah, so
regardless.
I think Mini Monk's going to be. That's
just unfair to us plebs, I think.
Yeah, why do we deserve this?
It's like when Clary was playing against the VFL players. I'm Terry Top Up wearing number 68 and fucking Mini Monk's
maybe Mini Monk is maybe he'll crumble under the pressure. We'll have to keep spruiking him a little bit on the socials.
Seems like a cool, calm, collected cucumber.
That's gonna do it for us today. I wanted this to be a short podcast, but ended up going for 48 minutes. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning this one in. Last podcast before opening round. We will be reviewing opening round and our reactions on the Sunday, hopefully. Late morning or early afternoon, you'll get that one. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. Turn those notifications on. Go over to the Round 1 live show, the landing page. Hit the thumbs up. Let's get to 150 likes on that one. And we'll see you guys after some footy. Bye!